Accessing archive. Subject: Hippophae rhamnoides. Status: Declassified. April 26, 1986, 1:23 a.m., northern Ukraine. The night sky over the city of Pripyat was suddenly torn apart by a light that shouldn't exist. It wasn't the sun, and it wasn't a bomb. It was the exposed core of reactor number 4 at the Vladimir Lenin nuclear power plant. In a matter of seconds, the air was filled with a deadly, invisible rain. Ionizing radiation. The kind of energy that doesn't just burn skin. It unscrambles DNA. It tears apart the very blueprint of life. The firefighters who rushed to the scene didn't know what they were fighting. They were walking into a radiological inferno. Within hours, their skin began to turn black, their bodies failing as the radiation destroyed their cells faster than they could regenerate. The official narrative tells us about the concrete sarcophagus, the exclusion zone, and the evacuations. But the official narrative often leaves out the biological countermeasures. In the secret hospitals of Moscow and Kiev, as doctors fought a losing battle to save the liquidators, they turned to a classified asset. It wasn't a synthetic compound created in a lab. It wasn't a Western pharmaceutical. It was a thick, bright orange oil pressed from the berries of a thorny shrub that grew wild in the harsh mountains of Siberia. They applied this oil to the radiation burns. They administered it internally to protect the mucous membranes of the throat and stomach. They called it Siberian pineapple. You might know it as Sea Buckthorn. And while it couldn't save those who had looked directly into the reactor core, for thousands of others, it was the difference between permanent scarring and healing. It was the only substance they had that could signal the human body to repair itself in the presence of nuclear fallout. But this wasn't the first time the Soviet Union had deployed this biological weapon. Decades earlier, at the height of the space race, another man had relied on this oil, Yuri Gagarin, the first human being to leave the safety of the Earth's atmosphere. Before he climbed into Vostok 1, before he was shot into the vacuum of space, where cosmic radiation is a constant threat, he consumed this oil. It was part of the strict diet of the cosmonauts. They knew that to survive in a hostile environment, the human body needed a shield. And they found that shield not in technology, but in nature. So here is the question that should haunt you. If this plant is powerful enough to be used by cosmonauts, if it is powerful enough to be the primary treatment for radiation burns at Chernobyl, if entire empires have considered it a state secret and a strategic resource, why is it virtually unknown to the modern Western consumer? Why, when you walk into a grocery store in America or Europe, do you see oranges, bananas, and apples fruits that are biologically weak compared to this powerhouse, but you never see sea buckthorn? The answer is not an accident. It is a feature of the system we live in. We have traded utility for convenience. We have traded nutrition for aesthetics. We have deleted the plants that are hard to harvest, hard to process, and hard to patent, and replaced them with sugar-filled water balloons that look good on a shelf. Today, we are initiating a full system restore. We are going back into the archives to uncover the history, the biochemistry, and the forgotten power of sea buckthorn. We are going to look at why Genghis Khan fed it to his armies. We are going to analyze the glitch in its genetic code that allows it to produce oils that no other fruit can produce. And we are going to teach you how to bring this nuclear berry back into your life, your soil, and your body. This is not just a gardening guide. This is a declassification of a biological asset. To understand the power of sea buckthorn, you first have to understand where it comes from. This is not a plant of the tropics. It does not grow in the easy, fertile valleys where the soil is soft and the rain is gentle. This is a plant of the wasteland. It evolved in the harsh, cold deserts of Central Asia, the Himalayas, the Tibetan Plateau, the windswept steppes of Mongolia. These are places where the ultraviolet radiation from the sun is intense, where the temperatures swing from blistering heat to freezing cold in a single day, and where the soil is nothing more than gravel and dust. Most plants cannot survive there. But sea buckthorn doesn't just survive, it thrives. And to survive in such a hostile environment, the plant had to evolve a set of chemical defenses that are unparalleled in the plant kingdom. Think about it. A plant cannot run away. If the sun is burning it with UV radiation, it cannot seek shade. It has to build a chemical sunscreen. If the soil has no nutrients, it cannot move to a new spot. It has to engineer its own fertilizer. If animals try to eat it, it cannot fight back with claws. It has to build armor. Sea buckthorn did all of these things. To protect its DNA from the high-altitude radiation of the Himalayas, the plant began to produce massive amounts of carotenoids and flavonoids. These are antioxidants. They are the compounds that absorb radiation and neutralize the free radicals that destroy cells. When you see that bright neon orange color of the berry, you aren't just seeing a color. You are seeing a radiation shield. You are seeing millions of years of evolutionary adaptation to solar stress. When you eat that berry, you are uploading that protection into your own body. But the plant's genius doesn't stop at chemistry. It extends to engineering. Sea buckthorn is what we call a nitrogen fixer, but it's different from your beans and peas. It forms a symbiotic relationship with a very specific ancient bacteria called Frankia. These bacteria live in massive, coral-like nodules on the roots of the shrub. They have the ability to pull nitrogen gas out of the atmosphere, the air we breathe, and convert it into ammonia, a solid form of fertilizer that plants can use. This means sea buckthorn is a terraforming machine. You can plant it in a gravel pit. You can plant it on a strip mine. You can plant it in soil that has been destroyed by industrial agriculture. And slowly, year after year, it will heal that land. It injects fertility into the ground. Its massive root system, which can spread 40 feet from the trunk, locks the soil in place, preventing erosion. It literally holds the earth together. In the 1950s, the Soviet Union realized this. They didn't just see a berry. They saw a tool for geoengineering. They planted hundreds of thousands of hectares of sea buckthorn to stop soil erosion, to fight desertification, and to create windbreaks on the steppes. It was a matter of national security to keep the soil from blowing away. Contrast that with the West. In the United States, you will often find sea buckthorn listed on government websites, not as a crop, but as a noxious weed. They call it invasive. They say it spreads too aggressively. They say it is hard to kill. And they are right. It is hard to kill. That is the point. The modern agricultural system hates things that it cannot control. It hates plants that don't need fertilizer, because then they can't sell you fertilizer. It hates plants that don't need pesticides, because then they can't sell you poison. And it hates plants that spread on their own for free. They call it invasive. We call it abundant. We call it resilient. The very traits that make it a threat to the industrial monoculture are the traits that make it a savior for the survivalist. But let's move from the roots to the fruit. Because inside that tiny, orange, impossible-to-pick berry lies a nutritional profile that defies logic. It looks like a mistake. It looks like a glitch. In nature, you usually have to choose. You can have a fruit that is high in vitamin C, like a lemon. Or you can have a nut that is high in vitamin E and healthy fats, like an almond. Sugars and acids go in fruits. Oils and fats go in seeds. That is the rule. Sea buckthorn breaks the rule. It is one of the only fruits on planet Earth that contains oil in its flesh. If you squeeze a blueberry, you get juice. If you squeeze a sea buckthorn berry, you get a thick, opaque, oily emulsion. It is juice mixed with fat. This is critical. Why? Because many vitamins are fat-soluble. Vitamin E, vitamin A, vitamin K, they need fat to be absorbed by the body. In most fruits, you eat the vitamin, but without fat, a lot of it passes right through you. In sea buckthorn, the vitamin and the delivery mechanism are packaged together. It is a complete bioavailable system. and the oil itself is rare. We are talking about omega-7, palmitoleic acid. You hear about omega-3 South all the time. You are told to eat fish or take fish oil pills. But omega-7 is the forgotten fatty acid. It is incredibly rare in the plant kingdom. Macadamia nuts have a little bit, but sea buckthorn is the world's richest source. Omega-7 is the building block of your skin and your mucous membranes. Think about the lining of your stomach, the lining of your throat, your lungs, your intestines, and your external skin. All of these tissues rely on omega-7 to stay hydrated, elastic, and to regenerate when damaged. This is why the doctors at Chernobyl used it. Radiation kills the cells that divide rapidly like the lining of the gut and the skin. By flooding the body with omega-7, they were giving the body the raw materials it needed to rebuild those barriers. It heals ulcers. It heals eczema. It soothes the dry, cracked skin that comes with aging. It is literally the oil of youth. And then there is the vitamin C. We all know the story of scurvy. Sailors dying at sea because they didn't have fresh fruit. We are taught that oranges are the gold standard for vitamin C. This is a marketing lie. An orange is a mediocre source of vitamin C. Sea Buckthorn contains up to 15 times the vitamin C of an orange. But it's not just the amount, it's the stability. Vitamin C is usually very fragile. If you cook it or dry it, it destroys the vitamin. But because sea buckthorn is so acidic, and because it contains so many flavonoids, the vitamin C is stabilized. You can freeze these berries for years, and the potency remains. It is a long-term storage battery for human health. So we have a plant that heals the soil. We have a berry that heals the body. We have a history of use by superpowers. Why isn't it in your garden? This brings us to the barrier to entry. The reason the system suppresses this plant is not a conspiracy of silence, but a conspiracy of convenience. Sea buckthorn is hostile. If you try to approach a wild bush, you will see why. It is covered in thorns that are 3 to 4 inches long. These aren't like rose thorns that scratch you. These are like hypodermic needles made of hardwood. They can puncture a car tire. They can go through a leather glove. And the berries? They don't want to be picked. Most fruits have an abscission layer, a little seam where the stem meets the fruit, so when it's ripe, it snaps off easily. An apple wants to fall. A raspberry wants to slide off the bush. Sea buckthorn berries are fused to the branch. The skin is thin and fragile. If you tried to pull one off with your fingers, it will burst. You will be covered in bright orange, staining juice, and you will be left with nothing but a frantic mess and bleeding hands. It is a nightmare to harvest. You cannot run a combine harvester through it. You cannot send low-wage laborers into the field to pick it quickly. It resists the industrial scale. For 50 years, agricultural engineers have tried to design a machine to harvest sea buckthorn. They have mostly failed. A plant demands a different relationship. It demands patience, or it demands a hack. The Germans, who are some of the few Westerners to embrace this plant, figured out the protocol. They realized you don't pick the berry, you take the branch. They cut the entire fruiting branch off the shrub. This sounds destructive, but the plant is so vigorous, so aggressive, that it stimulates new growth for the next year. It's like pruning. Then they take these branches, loaded with berries and thorns, and they freeze them. Once frozen, the physics change. The berry becomes a hard marble. A simple vibration machine, or just whacking the branch against a bucket, causes the berries to fall off cleanly, separating from the thorns and leaves. It is a brilliant solution. But it requires a freezer. It requires a cold chain. It requires effort. And in a food system designed for speed and shelf stability, sea buckthorn was deemed too difficult. So we ignored it. We ignored the medicine because we didn't like the packaging. But history didn't ignore it. If we look back further than the Soviet Union, further than the Cold War, we find traces of this plant in the legends of the ancient world. The botanical name, Hippophae, tells a story. It comes from the ancient Greek. Hippo means horse. Phaos means shining. Shining horse. Legend has it that the ancient Greeks would release their old, sick, or wounded war horses into the wild to die. They couldn't afford to feed a horse that couldn't fight. But sometimes, these horses would wander into patches of thorny scrub near the coast. They would eat the leaves and the berries because there was nothing else. Months later, the soldiers would find these horses. They weren't dead. They were fat. They were energetic. And their coats were shining with a metallic luster. The oil in the berry, the omega-7, had restored their health and made their hair clean. The Greeks realized that this wasn't just animal feed. It was a revitalizer. Move east to the Mongol Empire. It is said that Genghis Khan, a man who conquered more territory than anyone in history, understood the power of this plant. His armies moved fast. They lived off the land. They didn't have supply lines of medicine. Sea Buckthorn was their pharmacy. They drank the juice to boost their stamina. They used the oil to heal their wounds after battle. The Mongols knew that the Siberian pineapple gave them an edge. While other armies succumbed to scurvy, fatigue, and infection, the Mongols kept riding. It was a strategic biological advantage. This history is encoded in the DNA of the people of Tibet and China. The Cebu Yidian, the classic text of Tibetan medicine written in the 8th century, devotes 30 chapters to Sea Buckthorn. 30 chapters. They classified it as a purgative, a tonic, a healer of lungs, a balancer of blood. For 1,000 years, while Europe was bleeding people with leeches to cure the flu, the monks of Tibet were prescribing sea buckthorn oil. We are only now, in the 21st century, beginning to validate what the ancients knew. Modern science is catching up to the protocol. Studies are now showing its potential in cancer research, in cardiovascular health, in managing diabetes. But let's bring this back to you, to the individual, to the person who wants to step out of the industrial food system and secure their own supply of liquid gold. How do you grow it? You need to understand the biology of gender. Sea buckthorn is dioecious. This means there are separate male plants and female plants. The female produces the berries. The male produces the pollen. If you buy one plant and stick it in your garden, you will never get a single berry. It needs a partner. The pollen is carried by the wind, not by bees. So you need to plant the male upwind of the female. One male can service about 7 females. It is a harem system. You need to give it the sun. It hates shade. Remember, it evolved on the high steppes of Mongolia. It wants the sky, but it doesn't care about the soil. You have clay? Fine. You have sand? Perfect. You have rocks? It loves them. Once you plant, you have to be patient. It takes 3 to 4 years to start producing, but once it starts, it is exponential. A mature orchard can produce tons of food per acre. And because it is a perennial, you plant it once, and it produces for decades. And what do you do with the harvest? You become an alchemist. The juice is too sour to drink straight. It has a pH of near 2.7. It's like battery acid, but healthy. You mix it with honey. You ferment it into a cider. In Russia, they make a sea buckthorn vodka that warms the blood in winter. But the real treasure is the oil. You can see it floating on top of the juice. If you let the juice sit in the fridge, a bright orange cream rises to the top. That is the medicine. Skim that off. Put it on your face. Put it on a cut. Swallow it. That is the omega-7 and vitamin E concentrate. There is a movement happening right now. A quiet return to these lost crops. We are realizing that the easy path of modern agriculture has led us to a dead end. Our soil is dying. Our food is empty. Our bodies are inflamed. Sea buckthorn represents the other path. The hard path, the path of resistance. It is a plant that demands respect. It demands that you put on gloves. It demands that you work for your harvest. But in exchange, it offers you something that money cannot buy. It offers you a connection to the raw, unfiltered power of nature. It offers you a way to heal the damage done by radiation, by pollution, by aging. The system labeled it a weed. The system tried to pave over it, but the system was wrong. This is a biological asset that has survived ice ages, nuclear meltdowns, and the fall of empires. It is waiting for you to rediscover it. Look at your land. Look at the edges. Look at that dry, sunny spot where nothing else will grow. That is where the sea buckthorn belongs. Plant the male. Plant the females. And in 3 years, when you see those branches glowing orange in the autumn sun, you will know that you have successfully executed the protocol. You have secured the asset. You have recaptured the lost technology. This is Protocol 9. The archive is open. The seeds are out there. The rest is up to you. But before we close this file, a directive for the operators watching. The algorithm is designed to bury this kind of information. It favors the short, the sweet, and the superficial. It does not want you planting thorns. It does not want you healing your own radiation urns. If you want to ensure that these archives remain open, you must establish a permanent link with this channel. Engage the subscription protocol. Turn on the signal notifications so you are alerted the moment the next file is declassified. And we need your data. The system is vast, but our network is stronger. Go to the comments section and report in. Have you seen this shining horse plant in your area? Have you tasted the liquid gold? Or are you growing a biological asset that we haven't covered yet? Your intelligence helps us build the map. Share this transmission with one other person who is ready to wake up. The signal only spreads if you carry it. Stand by for the next upload. Transmission complete.